No agenda, no takes, and no rules. Social Sessions with Mike Gannotti.
And we are back, and this is actually take two of Social Sessions, because yesterday when we went to do when we went to actually record this, what did Mikey forget, Alfred?
I forgot to hit the beautiful red button that says record.
Record. So we're back. So I'm
Great
very
practice
happy
run, though.
today to be joined by a colleague and just great guy, Alfred Ojukwu. And Alfred, before we get started, and before you introduce yourself, just want to call out, Alfred is a trooper. This morning, he's having all kinds of internet connectivity issues via your cable service. So what are we doing today as far as mobility?
Yeah, so I'm also joined on in my cell phone. I took the Wi-Fi connection off, and so you're hearing me through my Surface earbuds on the cell phone, so that the cell phone connectivity always stays on, but the video is always going to come through the PC. If the home internet connection goes out, I might freeze for a second, but you'll still hear me.
So we are doing, it's kind of like that ultimate mobility, anywhere, anytime, any place.
Exactly.
And this time with a Surface device, the earbuds.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Which leads me into, so Alfred, tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh man, I gotta say the same thing again. I think I've said it already before, but Alfred Ojukwu, I am a Surface specialist, as they call it. I've been at Microsoft for about 10 years. I've done everything from Windows 10 device management, SCCM, Intune, mobile device management. And I think the last 4 years I've been in healthcare, primarily focused on working with healthcare customers and scenarios around adopting small and large devices. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm all excited to just be part of all of the things that are happening in healthcare and at Microsoft all at the same time.
Yeah, and it's kind of an I mean, it's been a time of upheaval and a lot of change for a lot of orgs, but also just as far as taking a lot of what I know you've been talking about with devices lighting up these kind of remote work experiences. It's kind of brought it fast forwarded, many of our customers that we work with to that point where things that we were looking at down the road several years have kind of all been pushed up front and center with the whole COVID episodes.
Yeah, and much more than that, right? So I think the beauty of it is that we, Microsoft, are learning to sort of adjust to the workplace, how things work differently, and stay even more connected, understand where our similarities and differences are, regardless of where you're located and your situation. So it's been a fun road, and it's still going. So hopefully we'll get a chance to share more and more with the audience and with the listeners.
Yeah. So, I have to ask, because we are all in this remote work from home because of everything that's been going on with the pandemic. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm rocking and rolling. I spend a lot of time. Before I used to do a lot of travel to visit the customer site, and I used to wonder. I'm like, okay, you need to be on site because the customer has to see you and the decisions have to be made. So after about 4 months of not doing that, I really thought, well, this is going to be interesting. We don't know how it's going to turn out, but I think we've all learned to adjust, both the customer and the teams, right? So one thing I've seen is, I still have to do all my housework. I still have house chores. But at the same time, I tend to find myself spending more time communicating via email, joining phone calls just like this one, and really just focusing on getting more done without having to travel. So the whole idea of remote work is actually true and real. It's not less productive. It's just a different way of thinking. So I can't complain. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, that's this whole idea that it's not less productive. In fact, we've seen a lot of our customers, and I know you've seen this as well, where as they've gone to this model that they were really unsure about and have been very hesitant about working from home. I think of some of my big pharma, and they had all these very expensive facilities and things set up, to house people to work and collaborate. They're finding that, in fact, as they've embraced, this whole digital workplace and work remote and have the right devices to light things up, et cetera, it's just the opposite. People are logging in early. They're like me. They're eating their lunch at their computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're finding that they're actually, as productive, if not more, as they've moved forward and at less cost.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with it. I enjoy what I do, and always willing to, stay connected with customers, with different scenarios. It's been a great adjustment. I think the rest of the world has to adjust too, because that's where we're headed. So
yeah. So as we get into talking about the devices and Surface and stuff, tell us a little bit, like, you've got to have, as handling devices, right, for us, handling Surface, you've got to have all the toys there at your disposal.
I'll argue that I probably do. I do have a lot of different toys. The way I think about it is I tend to stay connected, right? I enjoy staying connected, and here's a great example of me just kind of, this isn't the real image, but I'm a big image guy. You can see I have the Surface Hub, the Surface Pro, Surface Laptop, and just depending on the scenario, I tend to use different devices, and that's kind of what I've done. I love my backgrounds too, so you can see that,
Yeah, and that
part of my story.
And where do you, so real last thing on this, because I got to ask, you always have the best backgrounds. Where do you get them from? How do you find them?
Dude, it's as simple as I love telling the story because, if you think about, 5-10 years ago, where backgrounds on meetings were not the thing. It was wallpaper. So I had a ton of wallpapers from years in the past where, I'd pull up my windows and I'd change my desktop background, and I was an avid collector of backgrounds. So now, I really just got excited because when Teams added the ability to change your background, I had the option to just do a quick Bing search, right? And sometimes I'll have conversations with customers and, I'll ask them, what's your favorite background? Like, this is one of my favorite kitchen backgrounds, right? So I love the fact that I'm able to use these backgrounds and really just create the moment, create the mood, decide on, what setting that I want to be in and, what type of conversation I want to have. It really does set the mood. I mean, like I said, you have a natural background, right? And that's what people love to see. But sometimes you just want to really tell a story, and sometimes you just have to use the props that you have in hand. So yeah, I do a Bing search. I talk to my customers. I ask them, hey, what background do you think would be cool? They'll give me an idea, and before the end of the meeting, I'll either have one or two of those backgrounds in the setting.
That's cool, and it's something that everybody can do to help spice things up. I know I've been in all kinds of meetings where sometimes just for fun, people are switching up some of the ones, and I've even seen they came out with the latest Xbox games that are doing them. They started releasing backgrounds that you can use from that. Like there's the one Assassin's Creed Ragnarok. I think it's Ragnarok. It's Vikings.
Yeah.
And there you are. So yeah, some pretty cool stuff. And it does the squirrels. I will say it keeps people from kind of drifting off, right?
Exactly. It keeps them thinking. And that's again, this is going back to you're in this new environment, new world where you want to stay engaged. And we're constantly being asked to stare at the screen. Why not have some fun with the background? Why not have some area of dialogue that keeps the listener and the audience involved? And this kind of does it for me. So,
yeah, no, that's cool. So, as we're talking about the whole work from home and talking about devices and how they really light it up, because, clearly, like right now, you're using, for example, a pair of earbuds, right, from Surface to carry the audio to ensure that we have this quality of experience. And so as you look at all these things that light it up and that you cover, as you look at some of them, what are the things that you're seeing that are really resonating besides the fact that you're wearing a Surface on your shirt? what are the devices really that you're seeing and how they're lighting up experiences, particularly in our industry with healthcare and life sciences, and how folks are really connecting and how that's resonating with them?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Again, both you and I cover healthcare, so we're always looking for ways to help customers understand how the technology works, where it fits in, where they can leverage it,
Yep.
to get more done. And so with that, what happens is we tend to find ourselves looking at a variety of different types of devices for different sorts of scenarios. And I'm going to share my screen for just a
Yeah,
second here,
absolutely.
because part of it for me is being able to tell the full story and being able
Hmm.
to share sort of the journey we've gone on to get to where we are now. And here you'll see, I'll just jump here, a sort of an evolution of Microsoft, where we spent a lot of time looking at different scenarios about what customers want. Back in 2012, and this is 8 years ago, we got into the business because we wanted to make sure that we provided some sort of uh, innovation, and force people to think differently. So we had kickstands built into it. We had, keyboard type covers built into it. So now you
Yep.
have, scenarios by which you can actually use the keyboard. We've also added LTE to these pieces, to the solution itself, even headphones. And the whole purpose of this is, even in healthcare, we want people to have devices that allow them to remain as functional as possible, right? And give them options to decide on what's best for the organization, what's best for the team, and how they can take advantage of different solutions. So the result of that is you have everything from a 10-inch device, and you can see it here. And again, all
Yep.
these devices have writability, to even to a 28-inch device. Now, this one's my favorite when I'm working from home, right? So I use this 28-inch device at home, and even a 50-inch device. So depending on the scenario that we're talking about, actually, this is not a 10-inch. That's a 10-inch. um,
I was going to
um,
say, because I actually just turned in my Surface Pro 3 on Friday, had it for 6 years now, and
yeah.
ran great. I'm always on my Surface Book too. So I was like,
Yeah, no, and so we spent a lot of time looking at different categories, different scenarios by which people use
yep,
devices. So you see everything from a 10-inch device to a 28-inch device. And the reason why is because we want people to understand what they need, where they need it, how they can actually use these
yep,
devices in different roles. So depending on your role, if you're a nurse, if you're a mobile care worker, you might want to look at a Surface Go because it's very light, it's very durable. It allows you to kind of put it in your purse, and I'd say back pocket, but just a purse, right? And use it without having to worry about it. It runs full Windows, it runs Office, it
yeah,
runs Outlook, it runs Teams. It has a full 5 megapixel camera in the front, 8 megapixel camera in the front. It's not a run. It's not a slimmed down version of the operating system. It's a full OS. We also have things like the Pro X and the Pro 7, which are used for, what I call lapability. You can actually use
yep,
it as a laptop or a tablet. We don't call our devices tablets. I hear that all the time. We call them Surfaces, which is kind of interesting. It's different than some of the other OEMs that use devices. Um, but the services, again, it all depends on your role. If you're a pharmaceutical rep, if you're an insurance adjuster, you might want to consider either the Pro 7 or even the Laptop 3, which is probably one of our newer devices. Very light, very durable. Um, Probably one of my favorite, by the way.
yeah. I was going to say with the Gen Xers looking for like that serious hardware, and I mentioned this to you when we did our unrecorded version yesterday. How my daughter, when we were picking, we went to a certain store that has a lot of prevalence in the mall, and she tried out their laptop. It was time for a new one for school and stuff.
Hmm.
She said, okay, yeah, that's pretty cool, but let's just go for the heck of it. When we went to the Microsoft store, she looked at a bunch of different uh, third party ones, which she thought were great. But what I found was interesting was she was doing two things, looking for because she's into the cool, sleek, weight kind of thing. But then she was checking things like hinges, and she did that at the other store and in ours. And after picking up the Surface laptop, and it was a laptop 3, and then messing with the hinges, she was like, "Oh, this is it. This is the one." You know, she tried responsiveness, and then to top it off, this just happened last night. She was with one of her best friends and working on a paper, and he is doing an internship and is looking for a new machine. And he was like, "What do you have? I want the same thing." So she pinged me last night about it, like, "Hey, you know, he wants to know all about the laptop." So yeah, it's got that it factor.
It's a different world, to be honest. What you're seeing now is, you know, people want quality, people want premium, people want to be able to get something that's reliable, that's going to last a long time, that's going to allow them to stay productive. And that's what we build into our solutions, are ways to essentially ensure that the end users have an experience that they remember, right? So we talk about making sure that the software itself is reliable, the applications are working, you can manage them, that if you have an issue, you can return it and not have to worry about, you know, any challenges. So that's what we set out to build, which is reliable devices that allow you to stay productive, whether you're work, home, school, virtual. I mean, that's what I love about these devices, you know, just to be honest.
And I mean, the durability, like I said, who'd have thunk years ago I'd be turning in a 6-year-old device that still worked fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just I do a lot of editing and video stuff and all that, and that only had 8 megs of RAM. But for using my office apps and everything else, worked great. And it was still it just worked.
Yeah. Now, and again, so you and I both work in healthcare, so I spend a lot of time with my customers, basically helping them understand why Surface, what's so special about it, and how it can actually be used. So, you know, some of the examples you see is we have devices that are made for pharmaceutical reps because, you know, because you can have devices that have all-day battery life, because you can sign on to the device without having to use your fingers, right? So you have Windows Hello recognition that's built into it. And because you have options to decide on how to sign the document so that you're able to approve a request that's coming in for a customer. So we've built all these scenarios and solutions into the device just to give them different ways to think about this. So as you can see, we have a number of different scenarios for nurses, for clinical huddles, even physicians, right? So even the Surface Hub, if you've ever seen one of these devices, right, you can actually ink on top of it and you can have diagrams that you're using. So we have scenarios where we're dealing with telehealth. I have a very unique scenario where I'm working with a company that has connections in Uganda, and they use it for telemedicine and sharing information from overseas about what's going on, how they're solving problems, like, you know, relative to different medical practices, and having several doctors and physicians join the call and be able to iterate and write information down all at the same time. And I think that's fascinating. You know?
When I see like that whole I mean, we were talking about telehealth. I actually just saw, you know, we've seen during COVID where that has become really a new way of reaching out. And one of my customers has a video online where they're talking about how they've went from 0 to, you know, with Microsoft's help, you know, up to upwards of 5,000 virtual visits a day with patients. And so as you want to provide those premium experiences, and here they're showing, you know, like a CAT scan or MRIs, being able to real time work with that. And I even think about some of the things where, you know, we certainly see it within healthcare itself, where they have some of these teaching hospitals, right? Very large scale. And again, being able to take a classroom experience that was always physical, and with a device like this now, instead of a whiteboard, you can extend that experience virtually so you can expand your footprint, or during times like this, you can just keep on teaching.
Keep on teaching, keep on learning, keep on teaching, keep
Yeah.
on sharing, right?
Yeah.
Collaboration is key right now. Staying connected is key.
Yeah.
Coming up with different ways to share information is so where we are in 2020, and that's what I love about our devices, because it becomes this bridge that nobody knew was coming.
The one last thing I just want to share on the hub piece, that a lot of people miss out on. They're like, well, it's just another big touch screen. And it really isn't, because when we're talking about, number one, fastest growing fastest growing product in our history is Microsoft Teams, right? Which thankfully I get to cover. But that experience is native and built in, which you don't get with just any old screen.
Yeah, because it is very much an open space. Like, here's a great example where you have an optimized a view of patient being treated, and also being able to understand exactly what's going on with their current situation. The hub gives you that space. When you have a 10-inch device, 12-inch device, 13-inch device, 15-inch device, you may be able to get that done. You're going to have to bring it up closer, but having that hub view gives you a larger canvas to work with.
Yeah.
And with the cameras, you can have your own camera built into it. You can even project your laptop to the screen and make that the canvas, right?
Yep.
So we're creating scenarios by which people can actually stay connected and actually think about things differently. And I have a funny little clip here, because I work with some healthcare providers in the New York area. And I did spend some time with them, because they built an application with one of our partner companies, and it was essentially for facial reconstruction, right? So in that case, there's an app that runs on the hub, and when the patient comes in, they're able to sort of visualize what changes they want to see, whether it's the face, whether it's the skin tightening, whatever they want to do. And they'll be able to read about it, have a conversation with the doctor, and almost sort of enhance the experience while they're at the hospital, because they're learning so much about what it is that they're doing, what works, what doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They can even watch videos, right? So you can actually click the button, watch a video, and it'll share with you some of the things that are happening, even if the doctor or the physician needs to step out. So to me, that's huge, because now you're educating them before they even go into the actual operating room, right? And here's a little joke that we did. My buddy pulled up an image of me and said, okay, let's do some face scans. And this kind of shows you how the app works, where you're able to pull up the image of the individual, find the color texture, maybe mark a few spots that you might see, and identify where those changes need to happen. And that's just me kind of going through it, and just that editability is huge. And then once you find those areas and you're able to show how that works, you might be able to show, here's where we started, here are the things that we found that needs to change, and when we're done, this is what you'll look like. So you get to a point where you get a visual of where it's going, what to expect, and that's the sort of stuff that these sort of technologies do. So maybe I'll go ahead.
So what you're telling me is, with a Surface Hub, there's hope for this.
Exactly. I might transform to Denzel Washington. It's going to happen. I know it. That's what I'm after. So, but the beauty of it is there's so much that we are looking to share across the industry, and people sometimes, it's important to remember that we have to stay connected, and the devices is that catalyst that ensures you access the information, right? It's sort of an extension of who we are as human beings, being able to use that as a way to make that connection that needs to happen. If you're able to use it intelligently, you get more done, right? Another example that we have, which I found is very interesting, is what we call bedside entertainment, or being able to connect with the patient, right? So if I have a device that I have available, I can basically look up information about what's going on with the patient, maybe even give them the option to call home, call a family member. Again, we have a lot of people that are in these hospitals that aren't necessarily being allowed to communicate outside of that space. This is that opportunity to make that connection with those individuals, and connecting patients to loved ones. I think that's huge, right? And so these are the scenarios that we're trying to understand how to help people stay connected.
In fact, it's funny you mentioned that, because when I brought that up with some customers, their first objection was, yeah, but everybody's got a tablet or a smartphone nowadays. And the one thing that we found with the whole pandemic was people coming in when they had these issues, when there was an emergency. What was the one thing they didn't have with them?
The device, and a phone, or the cable.
They didn't have charging. So
funny.
It was good for the length of that battery, and then that was it, right?
That's
and especially if they were isolated, then you weren't getting those. So being able to provide those experiences natively, that did turn out to be a huge deal.
Yeah, and so that's the other thing, is that you now have the ability to take that charge and keep things going. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what are those scenarios that people are going to be using devices for. Do they need carts involved in it? How do we make sure that they're staying connected? So my excitement is that we are kind of exploring that space and trying to figure out what are the best things that are going to help us be more productive and keep people connected. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and I love, like, with these charging carts and stuff. I even saw, I think you have some of the cases that are not just protective, but they're antimicrobial?
Antimicrobial, yep. So we have the protective cases that allow you to not have to worry about touching the devices itself. So although, I will say that the devices itself, you can actually clean them, with sanitization options. So they are, cleanable, but then we have cases that have essentially are being used to keep that device protected, right? So, germ-free, disease-free, right? So because we don't want to have to worry about wiping the device down, you can actually build it in antimicrobial casing and not have to worry about it getting infected when you pass it off to the next individual. So that's huge, and that's where we're seeing the benefit. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
So there's a lot. I mean, I think it's important to realize that you have to know your scenario, and this is what I spend a lot of time educating customers on, is understand where that need is, understand where that need is missing, understand where you can help your employees or your teams be more productive and be more efficient in getting things done. And our solution is intended to enhance what you do so that you can focus on providing service, for healthcare, and then we'll focus on the hardware and making sure it stays running for you.
No, this is great. I mean, and I think certainly we've seen a huge uptick with the work from home scenarios, where they're looking at these devices and saying, hey, how can we better enable? It's not just we want to get that, going to your point about quality, get that cheapest, lowest common denominator device in people's hands, and the clunky box with no webcam or any of that. It's we need to enable these people, because it's enabling our business. It's helping with that whole digital transformation.
It is, and that digital transformation is around making sure you give them things that keep them connected. Now, the other piece I'll just mention is from an education standpoint is also we're thinking about it to what are we doing to help individuals that need to learn, do some sort of remote learning. So like our medical students. And so you can use these for educational purposes as well, right? So that means that if you have to have content that allows them to understand how a product works or how to administer medicine, these devices are also giving you that capability. So that's also quite interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the touch, right? Being able to interact in an educational setting and provide that interactivity not only to the educator, but to the the students as well. That's huge.
Yeah, and you can see that here, right? So education all of a sudden becomes key,
Yeah.
because you're creating a learning environment, and people can actually share information, and still stay protected, right? So
Hmm.
whether you have student groups, and again, teams is an integral part of this. You'll always see me hear me talk about teams and why that matters. It's kind of funny because this scenario right here is what you and I are doing. I have
Yeah.
my phone and I have my studio
Yep.
staying connected. So definitely great scenarios. And I typically challenge customers to try it out, test it out, see what fits, compare it, because there are a lot of solutions out there, but I can tell you that there's very few that have this much collaborative power
Yeah.
built into the core of the system itself.
Yeah. I mean, I'd agree when you, especially talking about when what you were just putting up there with with that educational component,
Mm-hmm.
providing that interactivity. And then lastly, I think along those lines is the fact that you're doing so with devices that are, again, the enterprise is used to managing Windows devices. We have the best security available, all those things. It's like it's an ecosystem where we're talking about the sum is greater than the individual parts,
Mm-hmm.
because when we build these devices, we build this with our services, our software, our manageability, all that in mind, not just the premium hardware, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's infused into the solutions we provide customers.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way I can explain it. And also, one thing that I will say that we've done well, and we've begun to focus on, is listening, hearing, getting feedback from people. What works? What doesn't work? What would you like to see? How do you want to see it? What are some things you change? And so that feedback is what we typically take and use to enhance the product, right? I'll give examples of that is, on the Surface Hub itself, there was feedback that it was too stationary. So we built in a battery pack right here
Yep.
that allows you to move it around. So, if you think about Windows, desktop machines back in the early 2000s. I was, probably a baby back then. um, the fact that you couldn't go anywhere, that desktop was right there next to you. You weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And what happened was laptops showed up, right? Now
Hmm.
you could just get up, move, go to another room, go to another office, get on the train. That's what these larger mobile devices are. That's what a Surface Hub is. It's that transition from this fixed audio-visual solution on a wall that doesn't go anywhere to I can have my meeting in open spaces. I can have my meeting in several locations and still get a lot more done.
Yeah.
And so that's that transition. So we took that feedback and built a solution around it. And stay tuned because we'll continue to innovate on top of what we have today.
Yeah, and I think I've already seen some of the buzz. We announced and showed it, right? But people are already starting to talk about like the Duo and new experiences and things that are coming. And some of that goes back to, we've brought now the operating system and the devices, and now instead of them being in separate domains, they're under one roof today, right?
Exactly. So Panos is our head of devices, and he's been given charge to build a solution around making sure that both the operating system and the hardware, the software and the hardware, are very much in tune, right?
Yeah.
So if the intention is to ensure that you don't run into any issues. So we've seen a lot of that already happen so far. The leadership loves where things are going, and we'll continue to see that happen so that there's that single mindset of I'm getting a great device and I'm having a great experience on that device. So that's
Yeah.
happening. So I'm super excited, man. I know
It,
it's.
it's exciting. It's exciting times. There's exciting stuff coming out. And we really have, what's been funny is just how, you know, again, we talk about, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. We see even our competitors slowly grudgingly starting to try to copy our stuff and incorporate it into their own. But we're really setting the trends as far as quality, innovation, and the use of these devices, moving away from just traditional, here's a phone, here's a tablet, and here's a computer.
Yeah, yeah. Again, if you're somebody that's interested in checking these things out, I always encourage you to reach out to somebody on your team or your, what we call your Microsoft rep, because they can always share with you a bit more detail. One of the bigger complaints I get from some customers is, I don't, these devices they look nice, and so they look very expensive, right? I don't want to pay a premium price for the product. And what I typically try to remind customers that all devices have some quality, some cost associated with it.
Yeah.
And if you look hard enough and you work with the right people, you'll find that there are a ton of discounts. Different promos that are available. Even students can get pretty decent pricing. And the beauty of it is, if you get these devices that last for 3, 5, 7 years, right? They're not, you're not just going to put them on the shelf and let them rot. They're actually going to get used, but they're going to be used, and like the return on it will give you longevity. And that's what people are looking for.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting times, and a lot to digest as far as all this. So if people want to learn more and want to see like devices in action, want to learn more about them, where should they go? What should they be doing besides talking to their rep?
Oh, that's actually a great question.
Should they call you at home?
Yeah, exactly. Send me an email. Right, I'm working on Microsoft Store. I mean, to be honest, the Microsoft Store, if you are an individual that are looking for solutions around devices, the Microsoft Store. If you go straight to the store, you'll see all the devices, all the pricing, all of the different options that you have. And if you are a business or entity that are looking to purchase it for a larger audience, reach out to someone on your team that works with Microsoft, or even a partner that helps with devices. Everybody's willing to share that information. And the truth is, we're seeing heavy adoption right now. The need for quality devices are so important. I don't want you to miss out. I don't want your teams to miss out. And even if it's just evaluating, because here's the thing, once you get a device, once you get one of these devices in your hand, it's a different approach. You start to see why people value something like this, because of the experience they have, the connectivity they have. And we have been jaded because in the past, we may not have had the best experience, but that experience is no longer here. It's much better now. So reach out, ask questions.
Yeah. One last thing. I just got to harp on this because when you were saying about, the quality, just kind of hit me again, going back to turning in my laptop on Friday. In this world of work remote, if the devices, companies often had, per building or whatever, they had their support person. They're built into the cost of operations and all. It was easy to go drop a device off, grab something, and go with these lower cost devices. That's not the case. Like, I had to plan and make an appointment a week prior just to get a hold of a person to turn in a laptop. So quality does matter, because when you're working remote from home, it's not convenient when a device goes down and you're having all kinds of issues, because you get a lower cheap quality and the hinge breaks or gets loose and things, they start peeling the plastic cover and all that stuff that typically happens with a low cost.
I don't know about those things.
You don't have to do that. You have the candy store, man. We have to do like what they have. We had years ago, we did a series called Office Cribs, where we were showing people's work from home, and it was around Skype. It was the Skype
wow,
showing their remote setups, because yours has got to be the bomb with everything.
Yeah, no, it gets to a point where you have so many devices, you're like, what am I going to use today?
What will I use today?
But,
yeah,
it's all part of.
It's all good.
it's all part of making sure people have an opportunity to choose. That's important.
And for the device they need for the type of job they're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, dude, this has been super informative. So Microsoft Store, talk to your rep, show up at Alfred's front door.
Exactly. You can reach out to me.
Yeah, so some great follow-up that people can actually take a look. I know we have a lot of videos online, and stay tuned because definitely more to come.
Exactly. So, Mike, thank you. I mean, this is amazing. I really like the fact that we're able to share this information with, the audience. They're going to ask questions, and hopefully you get some answers.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch our video today. If you have additional questions, things you'd like to see us cover, certainly you can drop us a note on our blog in the comments. Happy to follow up. And with that, this is Mike and
Alfred.
Bidding you have a great day. Take care. And as always, everybody, and ciao.